Respectful.
Do you know what that one means?
Being kind to people.
When you have a child, from the second they're born, you have an immense, powerful feeling to protect them and do what's best for them. And I guess when they hurt, you hurt.
Are you on the autism spectrum?
I'm pretty sure this is a documentary about autistic people. Of course I am. Are you kidding me? Annoyed because I didn't mean to, but I guess I'm accepting it.
Across Australia, some children with autism spectrum disorder are being subjected to systemic failure and human rights breaches in our schools. This not only impacts them, but also their parents, caregivers and loved ones.
I feel like this decade we'll look back at shame of how children with autism are treated in schools. They have such sensibilities to sight and sound, time management. It's not considered in schools, and it's actually very painful for them, and they melt down, they get suspended, and it ruins our lives. Like, our finances go down, we are secluded. It's creating a lot of problems, and I think with such a large percentage being treated the same way, one day in the future we'll look back and this will be a period of shame.
The system is not broken. It was built this way. It was built to discriminate. It was built to not be accessible to disabled people.
And I'm wondering how long it's going to take our education system to catch up, because these kids are just falling kind of in a hole.
We have to fight for our kids.
They're not asking for anything more than any other child. They just want it to be fair. They just want to be loved, and they just want to learn.
Being a teacher in the past, I knew that small schools are very family-oriented environment. I'd worked in a small school and I'd had students with autism in a small school, and I just knew how nurtured they were. Spring Terrace, I would have to say, were amazing because they accepted us out of zone. The first year was quite diabolical. The poor teacher had a massive class. She had 3 students with quite profound autism in her class and no teacher's aide. All we would see is our children running away or acting out or getting angry. But she did an amazing job. I don't know how she did it.
So primary school was really good for you. What happened when it came to choosing a high school?
The 2 mainstream high schools here are very large. There's a number of issues with that. Lachlan would find it hard to be on time everywhere for a start. He has slow processing disorder, so it takes him a lot longer to process information. That would cause trouble in itself. He does have OCD tendencies. Well, they've kind of alleviated, but at the time, if people bumped him, he'd want to touch them back. He'd have gone from a school with 50 students, a teacher's aide, very supported, to an environment unsupported, no teacher's aide, 1,500 kids, bells going all the time. It would never have worked. So I applied for the local special school. We haven't had a great experience there. To be honest, from the very first time we went there, I should have known, because when you talk about kids with special needs, you expect there to be quite an involved transition. There was no organisation, no structure. And basically we've been a year and a half of crying, meltdowns, suspensions. And I thought, what am I doing? Like, we are fighting every night, and Lachlan's crying every night about school the next day. We're not having a good day. We're having terrible anxiety. The teachers, the parents, the students, everyone. We're getting suspended. What are we doing it for? He's not learning anything. Why are we going through all this trauma and we're not doing anything?
All right, Lockie, can you please tell me how old you are?
14.
14. Do you go to school?
Homeschool.
You're homeschooled?
We hope to get a school next year, but seems unlikely.
Do you enjoy school?
I miss it, to be honest.
Really?
Not sure if I enjoy it, but I do miss it.
So if you look here, back to year 3 at the NAT plan, Lachlan was actually over the top band in all the areas. One area he was at average. Writing. Also in Year 5, he's not off the scale, but he's over the top bands, except for writing. And that comes down to the fact that he has really low dexterity in his fingers. Once Lachlan has then moved to the special setting, he was getting elementary all of a sudden in Year 7. I have spoken to the school about assessment that was done, and I was told that they don't assess anymore. When COVID hit, I was sent home books that had very minimal in them, no marking, no feedback. It's basically sit in the corner and do this sheet. They are stage 1 sheets and he's in stage 4, so you're looking at Year 1, Year 2 level.
And this is his workbook from this year?
Yes.
He's in Year 8?
Yes, and it's Year 1, 2 work. I did work at home with him. We did lots of learning at his level, stage 4, and he was fine with it. And I've done perimeter and perimeters of triangles, half base times height. After I had finished doing perimeters with him, I saw his school book and I was really gutted. That's the best word for it. My stomach just dropped. There were no instructions, it had never been done. And the difference, I thought, why are all these teachers being paid a fortune to educate him and I'm sitting at home doing it for free? And it really annoyed me because I've given up my whole life to do it.
And that's a massive difference.
Oh, that's huge.
This is you and this is the school system that you trusted your child with.
Yes, and the thing is, you have to teach it. You can't just go, here's a sheet, figure it out. And I found that other children in other classes from the school were given the same sheets, regardless of their level, because they don't assess.
One of the things that is really characteristic of individuals on the spectrum is a difference in thinking, and it's a difference in how people see the world around them, and we have to recognize that. Individuals on the spectrum often have what I like to call an uneven pattern of development. So individuals who do not speak or who also have associated intellectual disability, which is one end of the spectrum, may also have really good skills in certain other areas. So we can't assume that just because they don't speak or they've got troubles in this area that they're gonna not be able to do certain things. Conversely, people who are highly verbal, who have good language skills, who also have high levels of intellectual functioning, often have support needs in areas that people don't expect. So the thing that's really important with working with any individual on the autism spectrum is actually recognizing that you have to really look at how that person manifests those skills and needs in their own unique pattern. We have to recognize those severity ratings as they were put there to help to describe the spectrum of abilities, but not to label and confine people by those labels.
At the age of 6, I was diagnosed at the time with Asperger's, which is now, of course, a defunct diagnosis. So I am autistic. This diagnosis was procured at great length and with great difficulty after various medical professionals stated I was a naughty child, etc., nothing wrong with me.
And were you struggling in school?
I was absolutely struggling in school. I was in a school that wasn't built for me, aka every school in the country. The teacher was not well trained. The teacher was also cruel and unusually abusive. When confronted with my diagnosis, did not believe autism existed and said I should just get a good spanking.
Really?
She and a teaching assistant laid their hands on me and carried me out of the room. I was protesting this verbally, I was protesting this physically, and they still physically restrained me with their own bodies. I was not doing anything that would harm another student. I was sitting underneath a desk hiding because I was frightened.
I started collecting stories of everyone in the beginning to take to the local member to say, it's not just me. This is a common problem. I need your help. I made books, just so I could recall names if I needed to get together parents to help me try and make a difference. These are all stories just from Facebook parents going through the same as me. Same with this book here. There's heaps, there's tons.
So you've made a photo book of...
So I could keep track of them all. And then I have these folders I've started. I'm not alone. There's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of children just not being educated and just suffering because their needs aren't being met. This is only like the last 12 months.
This is a folder of 12 months.
There's 3 of them and 2 books. There's many stories in here. I've had to quit my job. I have no income. I had to leave work so many times my boss fired me and they're going to homeschool, even though that's a big time. From when your child's 5 to 18, that's 13 years.
See, that's interesting because during coronavirus, people are experiencing that, right? But this is your life regardless.
A lot longer, and we don't get grants from the government. We just go broke.
This is your life regardless.
Yes.
So Jane, why do you do this?
Because I want change and I feel sad for all these kids because I know quite a lot of them and I know how they suffer. A lot of people are frightened about speaking. They think that they'll be targeted. They're already targeted. Don't worry about it. Speak out. You've got to have something to lose to be worried about losing it.
Look at me, baby!
Michael's IQ is 76. He's 6 points too high for a special school. So I have no choice but to put him in a mainstream school. We live in a current society where there is no bridge in this gap. There's nothing. It's hard enough doing it by myself. You don't want to put all of your faith in the school and then have them turn around and say, well, you're on your own. We'll let him come here every day and he can wear the uniform, but you still got to do all the work yourself. That's not how this is meant to work.
When he was due to start school, we had a meeting with the school and said we'd like to keep him back. He's not toilet trained and that sort of thing. And they insisted, look, he'll have all the support in the world. Start him and he'll be fine, you know. He actually legally needs to start school. So they put a bit of pressure on us and we went, well, seeing as though you've said you'll help, you know. But once he started his schooling, the support just wasn't there. During his time in the MC class, their plan was to have him doing maths, but sitting on the toilet every 15 minutes to train him with the toileting. And the problem with that is, and we've noticed it at home, if you make a deal of it, he really backs up. He becomes, oh my God, I'm naughty, I'm bad. I was just in disbelief that they had so little idea about it, that they were going to sit him on the toilet every 15 minutes would have been highly traumatic for him, but they were going to humiliate him in class.
I realised early that, you know, a small school would be perfect for Kaylin. He had a lot of assistance, he had funding, but then what happened at that school, the principal lost her position. So then they brought in another woman who cut all assistance. So I removed Kaylin from that school and then put him into another small school. Then a new principal came to that school. I tried to say, look, I think I wanted him to be retested through the school, and they never did that. So I actually went to the education department, and the principal at that time actually lost her job because it was her job to make sure that these children had what they needed. So for all of those years, he had broken education. So he was really falling quite behind.
Give me cuddles.
Cuddles!
When he was 10, he was getting really upset all of the time. He was having meltdowns, found out he's got ASD level 1 as well as the ADD. So it was really from there a journey of trying to work with schools for them to accommodate kids like him. And the 4th school that we've tried is distance education, where he works with a teacher on the laptop. And that worked for about 6 months, but then his anxiety and depression from literally just not understanding the work, but not having the courage or the social skills to ask for help. So he's 15 now, so he now doesn't do school. He's now working, and we're looking at TAFE to complete year 10 when he's ready, which isn't just yet.
So you're going to try and work out what the coordinates for A are.
X minus 3, Y minus 2.
Right.
If you wanted to send Lachlan to a public school, Is there any support available for you?
Nothing. I'm in that situation at the moment. That's in this region. I have been told there is one autism class. We've got lots and lots of kids on the spectrum, and that would allocate 6 places. But besides that, I was told that there's only 2 special ed trained teachers of the 10 or so special ed teachers in mainstream. And I was told by the principal I'd be setting Lachlan up to fail by sending him there, and I totally agree. He's right, and I'm glad he was honest.
The Alice Springs Declaration that underpins our Australian curriculum actually outlines what our goals are for all students. The goal for all our students is to really be people that can go forward, make good decisions, interact with people and be, good people and contribute to their society and also keep learning throughout life. We have to be looking at, I think, much more proactively teaching generosity, teaching self-confidence, teaching that sense of belonging and creating places where it's okay to be different. And we should be doing that from the very beginning.
How would you describe being on the spectrum?
Honestly, I don't really know. The only thing I know is that instead of treating me like normal person, people are like, oh, he has autism. I get it, I have autism. Can you guys just go 1 second without mentioning it?
Does it get frustrating?
Yeah.
Yeah. What does it feel like when sometimes you have a reaction that's out of your control?
Honestly, it's hard to explain. It starts off, it is in my control, it starts off out of my control, but then I can control it, but I continue doing it. It's hard to explain.
Individuals on the spectrum have a lot of issues with knowing what to filter and what not to filter. And that affects things like why they experience a lot of sensory differences. And you'll hear a lot of individuals on the spectrum talking about sensory overload. We know that because of the bombardment of sensory input or issues, that there's also a lot of people experience difference with heightened anxiety.
Classrooms are loud. Classrooms have sensory overload. Classrooms have a lot of other students who will often be quite cruel, who will bully because they haven't been properly educated about autism and interacting with autistic people. The lessons will usually be in a format that is not helpful for autistic learners. The level of stress is extreme. If a student can't learn and has a meltdown or doesn't engage with the learning or becomes distressed, this is treated as misbehavior rather than a natural response to being unable to access the learning.
Basically, Evan's primary school years have just been a full battle. And it has taken its toll on both of us. Evan is an expert masker, which means that he keeps himself contained during the day at school and doesn't show his stresses. And that culminates in him coming home and as soon as he's in the home environment, exploding into often massive meltdowns. And they were a daily occurrence for a long time. They used the analogy of shaking a Coke bottle. One little thing happens at school, an unexpected change or some work that hasn't been explained in a way that he understands. And so that's a little shake of the Coke bottle. And every time something little happens, it's another shake of the Coke bottle. And when they get home, it's like taking the lid off and the Coke just goes and explodes everywhere.
To be honest, once I have a meltdown, it all just washes out.
Unfortunately, I've seen it for myself when Michael's at his worst. It was scary to see him that out of control. He hasn't had a meltdown like that for a very, very long time, but it is petrifying to see your child in that kind of a state. And that's not something that any teacher or any other child or any aide should have to deal with, but it's a reality. They do have to deal with it.
I think it's really challenging in the education system and how we've structured it to be able to create those pathways for kids to learn and strive and achieve, because it's all about collaboration and cooperation and consideration of everyone getting on together in a big group setting all the time. And I just know that that doesn't work for, you know, our children every day, all the time.
I think as human nature, we like to try and help someone that's very distressed. And for them, that's worse usually. They need space, quiet, no talking, so they can just calm down. And the more you try and engage with them, the more they stay rattled.
At home, does he have them often? Or how often does he have them?
Not much since we've stopped school. When school was on, a lot, mainly about going to school.
So has he been more calm?
A lot more. He developed really bad OCD when he was there, and it's gone. It was picking rocks out of people's car tyres. He would stop and have to pick all the rocks out. Lots of things.
How is his OCD now?
Gone.
Why do you think that is?
Anxiety. After feeling it, I know it's true. If you tried to take me down through the gate, I wouldn't do it. I would hit and scream and cry. I just can't do it. It's that intense feeling of rejection, disapproval. You're going to be in trouble. It's horrible. I couldn't get into a psychologist. There were none. I couldn't get into a psychiatrist. Their books were closed. My saving grace was the psychiatrist rang me and said he's taking a few new cases. And at that point, Lachlan was talking about jumping off the bridge down the road every day.
He would have been how old?
13.
And he was talking about
jumping off the bridge. And I was almost ready to join him for real. And what really didn't help was getting in the newsletter from school every second day, "Are you okay?" No. Does anyone care? No.
How did you find out that that's what he wanted to do?
He told me. He was very stressed. And to me, because he said that, he'd thought about it. He'd thought about what was near here. That's another reason we just stopped school. What's more important at the end of the day? Your mental health or academics? If you don't have good mental health, you have nothing.
I think it needs to become more mainstream that mindfulness and calming activities is important for everyone, not just kids on the spectrum. It's not a tool that someone with autism needs because they have autism, and really breeding that into the school system so that these kids that need those regulation tools don't feel like there's something wrong with them because they need it.
We have to create schools where people feel they belong. Now, one of the things that we know with bullying and with how people with disability are treated in schools by other students is often how the adults around them model it. Both out of school and in school, of course, but that's things like, you know, if a teacher treats somebody as not really being in the class, as being over there with the teacher aide, they're not seen as belonging. People on the spectrum make easy targets because they do things differently. We need to actually see that being different is okay. In our study that we're doing, one of the deputy principals said, if any school leader tells you that there's no bullying at school, they're lying. You have to be alert that these things are happening and constantly be looking for how directly or indirectly that you might be excluding people. You might be unconsciously reinforcing bullying, but we certainly can't say that we have policies and so we don't have bullying.
Bullying was our main issue. Never was it said it was because he was different or had autism. But yeah, it got to the point where he just wasn't safe there. We couldn't trust them. They didn't do what they said they would do. They didn't follow the parts of the IEP that they agreed to, especially with lunchtime supervision and activities to actually keep kids engaged instead of just having them go off into groups. That's where a lot of the issues happened.
I was bullied very severely by many other students throughout most of my primary and secondary education, but I don't hold it against these students. They were reacting to an environment, to a system that is not built for any student to succeed, let alone a student like me or a student like them. In large part, I was bullied not just because I was different, but because I gave a good reaction, which is fairly universal experience for autistic children. In early years at the school I went to, there was an after-school karate class, and in school hours, some of my peers would practice their karate on me. I allowed this to an extent. I sorted out because they would at least smile at me when they were kicking me. So that was positive social interaction with my peers. I got them to smile at me for me because of something I'd done. Awful, right?
Awful. How did you feel?
Miserable, utterly alone, utterly isolated, drifting in a hostile world, not sure what the fight was all about. Not quite sure what I'd done wrong at any given point because I don't think I had done anything wrong. Unfortunately, a lot of the time my bullies have also been neurodivergent because there are people who have been mistreated, there are people who haven't been treated kindly, there are people who have been treated terribly by the school system, there are people for whom school and sometimes home is a living hell. I know how easy it is to learn that that's what life is like.
Lachlan's been attacked twice, quite violently. The first time he was stomped on a lot and taken by ambulance. The second time he was king hit to the head several times, but that one I had pre-warned the school for 4 days about. But my hands were tied. I had to send him because attendance is the priority of the school. So we got to the gate and he was crying, and when we got there he said, "No, I can't do it, I can't do it." I let him out of the car, he was crying and he said, "I'll do it for you, Mum." And I felt awful later because at 1 o'clock he had an iPad at school and he was texting me, "Oh no, we have to go into the playground, can you help me?" And then I got a message from the teacher saying Lachlan's not to bring his iPad to school, he's refusing to get off it, about 2 minutes later. And that was because he was messaging me to get him out of the situation.
That moment when you received the text from Lachlan, like after that morning you'd had, did it break your heart to...
Absolutely. I have the visual in my head of him crying, getting out of the car saying, "I'll do it for you, Mum." Absolutely.
Do you know what happened with the other children, the ones that were violent towards him?
Not really, but in looking at that situation, those children are there with their own significant needs, and to me, it's not like you need to punish them. They don't always know how they're reacting. They don't have the friendship skills and the communication skills and the relationship skills to sort things out with each other in the playground.
What's your name? Jakey. Yeah, that's your name.
Those social challenges that happen in the playgrounds and in the group activities where he needs to skill up, but then, you know, kids being kids and other parents not understanding that this is a behaviour that's as a result of a feeling. It's not naughty, he's not trying to be bad. You then end up with a lot of that bullying and things that can happen, and then the rest of the behaviours sort of ensue from our kids as well, where they're running off and, you know, or hurting other children because they just can't control themselves, you know, because they don't really understand how they're feeling or how to process it. And then that becomes a challenge for the schools as well, you know, like that hitting people or hurting yourself or running off from school, all of that duty of care that the teachers have to have, because that's what has to happen.
I said to the school that I was really concerned that rather than providing him with extra support on the playground, they're simply just going to take him away from the playground. I won't have him excluded at school because the school has a duty of care to him to help him build these social relationships and not exclude him.
So how many times has he been suspended?
Prior to high school, 0. At high school, several.
Suspensions?
Yeah.
Expulsions?
Oh, they probably would have if I wasn't so annoying.
But do you know other kids that have been expelled?
Lots. I can't even get my head around how children in Kinder 1, 2 are suspended. They're 5, 6 and 7. They've been talking for 3 or 4 years. How can you not help them modify their behaviour to a point where they're not being suspended? That's not a solution. My friend whose child was suspended in kindergarten several times got really excited because she thought the school was doing something good and gave her an area where she could calm down if she needed to in kinder. And she said, "It's got poetry books and cushions," and her daughter piped up and said, "Not poetry books, power chords." They had her sitting in a power box area for her special space.
The one thing I really want to do with my life is make a world where nobody with disabilities has to suffer in the same ways I have for the same reasons I have.
What outcomes would you like to see from the Royal Commission that's currently underway?
Absolutely. Sweeping reforms from the top down of not only the educational system, but all other government systems, all other independent systems of Australia as a whole. I'm also hoping just for more increased public awareness and understanding on the issues, not just of, oh, poor disabled people, they're disabled, how terrible for them, but also just on the disability rights movement, on disability culture, on things like the social rather than the medical model, the idea that not all of us want to be cured or fixed, the idea that disability is a basic part of human diversity. And the only tragedy a lot of disabled people go through are the ones that non-disabled people make for them.
What we're often doing in groups is we're putting so much pressure on teachers, we're giving them the classes with 30 students, that they just can't cope. So we marginalize the kids that can be. So I think that is a very big danger. It's a danger for society. First of all, as I mentioned, people on the spectrum think differently. That means they're gonna think of things that that I don't think of as an neurotypical person. So I think we're really losing a valuable resource if we marginalize people. Even individuals with significant challenges and medical needs, can contribute quite a bit. The other thing is, we're also promoting a society for every other child that if you don't measure up, this is what happens. So I think we're also missing an opportunity to create worlds that actually help more people.
I think we're always the last thought about. You're in the special needs unit. Just go over there and be quiet. But a lot of these kids are really bright. And if they were supported, they can really thrive. They can be really exceptionally bright.
Have you thought about what you want to do when you grow up?
I do have a few ideas.
Oh, okay.
An animator, a chef, a cop, a game developer.
Not at the zoo. We have strong interest in animals. Lachlan is a walking encyclopedia on animals.
Save the seals! Every year, Canada allows the slaughtering of baby harp seals in order to make clothing. Because of this global warming, which is an actual thing, and overfishing, harp seals are now endangered. Go to the do.do/sealing in order to help save the seals.
We do know that autistic individuals often have a very literal way of thinking, often a very detailed focus, which can be a real asset, but it can also be difficult if you want to really see bigger pictures and themes and things like that. And the other big thing that impacts learning is the limitations that are placed on them. So for example, I have a very concern that when we place people in segregated environments, when we make decisions based on what we think about individuals rather than engaging with them and giving them the opportunity, we are placing limits on their future learning. A lot of things that can impact learning is about lack of opportunity, lack of way to work it out in the way that best suits, lack of flexibility to do it and show knowledge in the way that they suit.
I learn through reading very well. I learn through writing very well. I don't understand when people get given ambiguous instructions, and this is usually construed as defiance, deliberate misunderstanding, disobedience, etc. This is very difficult in exam situations as well, because understanding ambiguities is often used as something one must do in an exam. However, this is inequitable with autistic students, with other students who do struggle to understand ambiguities as just part of how their brains are wired. Integration is not the same as inclusion. So a school might admit disabled students, but then this school may continue to make lessons inaccessible, may continue to make classroom environments inaccessible for these students. This is known as micro-exclusion, and it prevents a student attaining their potential in education.
Every school's unique. Your success or your failure, if you want to call it that, which is what it ends up being, really comes down to the staff. You can be in one school with one staff, one teacher, and have a completely different experience to the teacher next door. I don't understand why nobody actually polices policies. There's all these policies in place. We assess, we adjust. You can have all the policies in the world, but if no one's policing it, it means nothing. Because my experience in the last 2 years is 90% of the teachers I've come across are not keeping any of the policies, and no one's even aware of it. I guess that responsibility is given to the principal and executives. However, if they're not being monitored and they're not doing it, no one's doing it. So in a special setting, quite often the kids have what's called a communication book. So anytime I would kind of have a meeting with someone at district or trying to resolve all these problems, I'd be told, you have a communication book. Well, this is my communication book, and it's empty for the whole year, apart from where I wrote right in the beginning, "Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to find out when newsletters are." I asked that all year. They didn't start till August 20, and I pulled out on August 12th and had enough, and that was a big one of my issues was the newsletter, because nothing in the communication book, no newsletter. I never knew what was going on. I wrote a few times, but no one ever responded, so I just gave up.
So are you supposed to write in here, send it with Lachlan, and
every
then
day
they write in the book?
Lachlan had a good day. Lachlan had a problem at lunch. Lachlan didn't drink his water.
It's completely empty.
It is empty. That's how much effort's put in.
If a teacher can't keep accurate records and a school can't keep a teacher accountable, that teacher shouldn't be at that school with a special needs child in their class. Because I understand individual teachers may have their issues, but there's also a level of accountability, and the school's got to keep that in check. And I'm not usually one to come down on people. I don't like being that person that makes waves for people, but at the same time, this is my child, and I'm not going to waste a year of his learning excusing somebody else's shortfalls. I can't afford to do that.
It's like their hands are tied, like they can't do what's needed. That's how I feel, and how our struggles have always been. You tell them your problems, and it's quite a simple solution, but it's like they have to go through all these hoops to get to that solution. But for me, it's like, well, if you did this in the first place, this wouldn't have snowballed to such an extent. I don't think parents get heard enough, if that makes sense. All our children are so different, but I think they need to take more notice of what the parents are saying, because no one knows our children like us.
I'm still struggling to understand why they'd leave us out of the decision-making process completely, not tell us anything, but then come up with this plan without consultation with anyone that they were going to do this.
There's nowhere to go to hold the school or the teachers accountable for their lack of action. I feel quite traumatised by it, because I feel like I have fought so hard for my child for so many years, and to have absolutely no recognition from people outside his therapists and people like that who really understand what we've been through in battling the school. There's no recognition, there's no acknowledgement, and the people in the education department don't seem to hold these schools accountable and just make excuses for them.
The teachers need more resources and help for themselves in the classrooms to be able to deal with all of the children in the classroom a lot more and where they're actually at.
The principal sets the tone for the school. We hear over and over, a principal can change the nature of the school. So you can have a school really floundering, a good principal comes in and changes the dynamic. Same thing happens, you've got a school that's going pretty well, pretty inclusive, a new principal comes in and all of a sudden I've got a lot of students being excluded. So I think one of the foremost things is to look at the school leader. How does the school leader model the practice? What we know that school leaders need to do. First of all, they need to be active in learning. They need to be open to learning, and they need to be learning along with their staff. Second, they need to actually set the vision for the school. So if you believe in inclusive practice, you need to be up there and showing people through your actions and what you're doing that I believe in leading them. You need to work with your families and communities. And you need to listen. And one of the things that we hear over and over from parents is they don't have an opportunity to provide meaningful input. You need to also be looking at your curriculum practices. And at the end of the day, a lot of things in schools is all about the curriculum. So we need to be looking at, I believe, that better curriculum for students on the spectrum is better curriculum for all students. And I don't want to give leaders a hard time, because leaders are also constrained by what they're set as the priorities for the leaders above them. So it also goes to the above leaders, the regional and the politicians. And we need to be recognizing and rewarding schools for inclusive practice and supportive practice as much as we're rewarding them for getting high NAPLAN scores.
In terms of funding, I don't think it's as open as it should be. They're very reluctant to tell you if you've accessed funding. And there's a lot of clauses in policies. Okay, so you could receive funding for a teacher's aide, but it's up to the discretion of the school how it's used. It's always up to the principal's discretion how it's used. Principals have a hell of a lot of power in schools. And there's some fabulous principals, there's amazing principals, but that's not always the case.
My understanding as a special needs parent in terms of funding is completely in the dark. And this is why I keep asking, in terms of funding, how is that supposed to be allocated? How is it supposed to be distributed? Because my understanding is it's allocated per child and put in a pool. So it's obviously meant to be going across a spectrum for a broad array of resources. And that's fine. But when somebody in my position asks you for that information, don't balk at it, give it to them. Help them understand it.
So we've just recently done all his funding again, but I know nothing of the outcome. I would say most of the children there do have funding, and you want to know where it's going. What technology is it being used for? Can it not be used for more people in the classroom? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think parents should be made aware of where it's going and what it can be used for.
There's actually a number of buckets of funding to promote the inclusion and achievement of all students with different needs at the school. So the best places where things work are where people are really flexible in how they use that different funding. A lot of times, the funding that's used is actually not used on the thing that'll actually best help the student. And it's often also targeted to things like teacher aides, and teacher aide support is actually one of the least effective supports that we can have for students on the spectrum. We don't actually know that one-on-one support helps. What we often do is we promote dependence, we promote stigmatization. By giving them that teacher aide, it actually discludes them from the class in some ways as well. It interferes with peer support. Peer support is one of the most effective strategies we can use that has an evidence base for students. So what we need to be doing with teacher aides, and teacher aides are wonderful, so I don't want to get rid of teacher aides, and I want all the teacher aides yelling at me, is we need to be looking at teacher aides as facilitators to a greater strategy.
What differences did you see having access to a neurodivergent teacher?
Absolutely everything. The way he engages with the students is vastly different. Most other teachers, for instance, when corrected, if a teacher makes a factual error when they're explaining something, they'll take a correction as a personal insult. Not only does he accept corrections, he encourages them. He encourages being held accountable by his students. He recognizes that this increases rather than decreases respect for him. I wouldn't have gotten through school without him. I moved schools a lot when I was younger, and I met this teacher in the most difficult years of secondary schooling for me, and if I hadn't, I would have continued moving schools, but I had him and I haven't.
I want to say up front that there are some schools in this country that are really getting inclusive education right. I think what most people are getting wrong about inclusion is inclusion is about a place. Inclusion is actually about a belief in a philosophy whereby it's not about having people together all the time, but it's about how we look at what people need and give everybody opportunities, not based on label, to get the things they need. The biggest thing that is conducive to inclusive is A, an attitude that everybody is part of our community and you belong and we're gonna figure it out. And two, a belief and a willingness to think outside the box.
In my ideal world, there'd be flexibility with starting time. A lot of those children have similar traits. Similarities are lack of sleep. They're going to be tired. They're going to get up later because they cannot sleep. They do not produce enough melatonin. So a flexible starting time would be one, because there's a hell of a lot of anxiety caused by being there at 9 o'clock. And especially when you need that extra time to do each step because you're supporting them with those everyday living skills. Number two would be the playground. There's so much going on and it's so open and unstructured. It tends to be an area where there's a lot of struggles. I think focusing on learning on their interests. Some people say you can't do that, and I don't agree. Some teachers find it more difficult to adjust than kids. This is the way I do it, and this is the way we're going to do it, and that's it. And it really doesn't work for those kids. Oh, what did I get? Close.
Do you ever take time out for yourself, Jane?
No, but I did put makeup on today. I don't usually do that. Well, my house is half finished and I can't even finish it renovating. I did have interest before. I liked volleyball. I just can't. How can I? I've been to one wedding since Lachlan was born and I was the bridesmaid or the matron of honour, and I had to leave because Lachlan was really young and he had a meltdown. And he was with my mum and she didn't cope very well. And I had to leave. I didn't even get to be part of the ceremony.
How does that make you feel?
Really sad. Really sad. But really also appreciative of how nice my friends are. I would die if that was my friend and that happened. But she understood it. There are some really beautiful people in the world. I just don't go to 40th. I don't go to any of that. The parents of the other children with autism, we've got a really close friendship. So every Friday night we go out for dinner and all our kids come. And if someone's busy, we can all manage each other's children. We're quite good at it. We've done it for a long time. If we didn't have access to that, I don't know what would happen.
I've done youth work before. I was a youth worker for 10 years and thought I was well prepared for being a parent. And it's so different when they're yours. It's so different because you're really emotionally invested, and it's not, you don't do your shift and go home and unwind. It's your life. There's no time off. It's all the time, and that's really challenging.
We've been to marriage counselling throughout this because we just knew we'd run out of tools for us, and we were both feeling stuff. We've done a lot of work on that ourselves, but that's super unusual. I think that the pressure that kids like this put on relationships is massive, and when you add that financial pressure, it just breaks. The financial pressure and the personal pressure is absolutely massive, and I think that most families are ill-equipped to be able to deal with that as well. And I think then what happens is teachers really bear the brunt of that when it gets to school, because the parents are just exhausted and they just want to hand the kids off to someone and have them solve it for them. And not because they're abdicating responsibility, but they're just kind of exhausted.
How would you like your life to be?
Normal. I would like it to be how it was, how I imagine it was when I taught children with autism. Their parents went to work, their parents had normal lives, and we were quite trained and we didn't need to ring them every day. And we had things in place for if it went pear-shaped. I would like to go to work. I have a whole centre here waiting to start. So it's got a glamour room. It's got a kids' supermarket. It's got 2 play structures. It's got inflatables. It's got gaming area, virtual reality. And we also would like to do some programs with kids with autism and employ some kids with autism to work there. It's ready to go. We just can't take on the responsibility of renting a building if we can't run the business, if I have to go to school every 5 minutes, or I can't homeschool Lachlan and run a business.
You're a very tough mother, so it's very nice.
Not always. Not always. Some days are crying, some days are angry, some days are giving up. Just depends.
What do you like about your mum?
She's nice.
The plight of autistic students in the school system isn't unique to Australia, and it isn't unique to autistic students, but it is naturally something that is very near and dear to my heart, and I think that everybody should be absolutely endeavouring to learn more from students with autism, present and past and future, not just to teach them.
Oh, what has Jake taught me? Patience. I think the biggest thing that you have to learn as a mum or a dad or even a family member of a kid on the spectrum is that the behaviour and the things that they say aren't actually what they mean to you or how they're saying it to you. It's what you're bringing to that is how you're interpreting it.
He's really taught me that self-acceptance is the way, and just because other people don't see us the way that they want to, that doesn't mean we change.
You have a completely different little person to raise and watch. So he's definitely taught me to not take life so seriously because it can change as these kids, they go up and down all the time. So, yeah, to be ready for change and to not take yourself so seriously, but to always stick up for yourself.
What makes you happy?
Mum. Thank you.
I've learned how much my stuff can impact them. How I manage my life isn't just about me, it's about them. It kind of gives my life meaning too. At the same time, there's pressure, but oh my God, I've got these 2 kids who depend on me. That's when everything gets, sometimes things feel bleak and meaningless and all that, but then it's the one thing that I've got is the boys, and it's my responsibility, but also my life mission to be there for them and to help them.
There is not enough time for me to tell you how much he's taught me. Like, he's just, there's patience and then there's patience. And with a boy like him, you just have to stop and you have to breathe and you have to know that everything that you're doing is right and it's for the right reasons. You don't stop fighting, you don't stop trying. You just do. You get up every day and you do it all again. It doesn't matter what it takes, you just do it.
Do you have a joke for us, Lachlan? One last joke.
My life.